BGMC. The biblical truth lives here.
The ancient Hebrew scriptures foretold of the Anointed One, Yeshua HaMashiach. The Messiah Yeshua came to call the people back to the truth of His word and to follow that righteous path. Yeshua then called Jewish men to be His disciples, and after His death and resurrection, those Jewish men told the world about the Jewish Messiah. Now, after 2,000 years, Beth Goyim Messianic congregation has that same calling of those Jewish men, telling all people, both Jew and Gentile, about the proper ancient path, teaching the Route 66 King's Highway from Genesis through to Revelation, and how you need and can get back to the proper roots of the faith and a closer walk with God. Now, let's hear the message.
All right, let's go get a blessing. Turn to the book of Esther. The book of Esther. Esther chapter 1. Esther chapter 1. Hey, Kelly, you're going to need to move the slides forward because you're going to do some reading too. Next slide here. All right, turn to Esther chapter 9. Verse number 20. Okay. All right, let's read Esther chapter 9, verse 27 and 28. Let me move my head off the slide here. It says, the Jews resolved and took upon themselves their descendants and all who might join them, that without fail they would observe these 2 days, in accordance with what was written in this letter and all the appointed times, every year. And at these days will be remembered and observed throughout every generation, every family, every province, and every city. And that these days of Purim would never cease among the Jews, and their memory be lost to their descendants. Hey, yes, we're doing Purim. It's 2 days early, but we always did it like here. But we're doing it a little bit different because it's very important that we're doing this today. And it's so interesting because of what occurred last night at 3 a.m. I was awakened from my sleep at 3 a.m. and I was like, why am I up at 3? And so here, the Jew. Here we go again. All right. Oh, we're just going to keep rolling. Esther chapter 1. Next slide. Hey, Esther chapter 1, verse number 1. These events took place in the time of Ahasuerus. The Ahasuerus ruled over 127 provinces from India to Ethiopia. As you see there, that in the orange section there, that is the Persian Empire, which includes Iran. Okay? So you see there over by the blue. I don't think I see my... Okay. So Israel went to war with these people last night. So I found it very interesting. Let's read verse. Okay, let's read verse number 9. Also Vashti, the queen gave a banquet for the women in the royal house belonging to the king. Okay, so what we're seeing is the king and queen from the land of Persia that you just saw. Okay, and she gave a separate banquet, separate from the king. Hey, next slide. Hey, Kelly, would you like to read verse 10 through 12? Can you see it up there? Turn on your microphone.
Hello. Esther chapter 1, verse 10. On the seventh day, when the king was in high spirits from the wine, he ordered Mehuman, Biztha, Harkona, Bigta, Avgala, Zatar, Carcass, the 7 officers who attended him. Verse 11, to bring Queen Vashti before the king with the royal crown in order to show the people and the officials her beauty. For she was indeed a good-looking woman. Verse 12, but Queen Vashti refused to come at the order of the king, which he had sent through his officers. This enraged the king. His anger blazed inside of him.
And so what we're seeing here in verse number 11 is Vashti did not listen to her husband, and she refused to come. And this sets up the whole section where Esther's going to be raised up. All right, next slide. Verse 16 and 17. Would you please read it?
Verse 16, Memucan presented the king and vice regents this answer, who will then start showing disrespect towards their own husbands. And they will say, King Ahasuerus ordered Vashti, the queen, to be brought before him, but she would not come.
You want
To know what happened just now that the queen disrespected. Now we have to remember that Vashti was not Persian in the sense of the original Persian people. Vashti came from the Medes, and they had a very, very different culture. And so her reactions to her land having been taken over and her experience of being in this place, although she was queen, her attitudes and culture were very different. And so it's kind of like anybody from the Goyim coming into Torah, coming into Jehovah's kingdom and being among his chosen people. A lot of people bump around and make a lot of mistakes, and a lot of people want to not comply with certain areas of Torah. So I always liken it to that. She was struggling. It does not give her license for her behavior. She doesn't have an excuse for this. She was in big trouble because he was the king and she needed to obey, and that's plain and simple, and we'll find out in the text. It doesn't give her a license, but we can understand that she was struggling with the adjustment.
All right, next slide. Read verse.
This advice pleased the king and the officials, so the king did what Memucan had suggested. Verse 22, he sent letters to all the royal provinces, to each province in its own script, to each people in their own language, that every man should be master in his own house and speak the language of his own people. So the advice obviously was that, this was unacceptable behavior, and that even though she was queen, Vashti's behavior wasn't going to be tolerated.
What I find most interesting is that the king sent out letters to everybody in their own language.
Just like the scriptures.
That's correct. Just like the scriptures.
The best letter ever sent. The scriptures were sent to the earth
Right,
and translated.
Let's move on to chapter 2. Everybody, chapter 2, next slide.
All right, Esther chapter 2, verse 2. The king's servants attending him said, a search should be made for young, good-looking virgins. Verse 3. The king should appoint officials in all of the provinces of the kingdom to gather all of the young, good-looking virgins to the house for the harem in Shushan, the capital. They should be put under the care of Haggai, the king's officer in charge of the women, and he should give them the cosmetics they require. Verse 4, then the girl who,
seems best
to the king should become queen instead of Vashti. this proposal pleased the king, so he acted accordingly.
Well, the reason we're seeing this is because later on, Esther will be offered half the kingdom. And she, so you're seeing all these wonderful things that she's getting, and she becomes queen. We're going to see that in a little bit. But this is how the Lord brought her into the kingdom.
And we also see the advisors here. They know the king. And it's important because they serve him. And we're reminded of that throughout the book, that these high-ranking officials in the kingdom, they understood they were servants, that they served the king. And I always liken that to us, in that if you want to serve the king, yes, when he speaks, you do what he tells you. But the high-ranking servants, who are servants in his house, in his chamber, they know him so well that they can give him advice that he accepts. And it's up to us to know our king so well. So well. Not that we give him advice, but we know him so well. We can anticipate. We already know a lot of what he's going to ask us to do. And that's the idea of drawing near to the king. These men knew him so well, knew what pleased him. And you ask yourself, how much do I know my Lord, and what pleases him? That's the heart of a servant.
And it's also like we're the bride of Messiah. So we all get brought into this one group of people from every nation. Next slide.
That's very good. I hadn't thought of that.
Verse 5 and 6.
Okay, Esther 2, verse 5. There was in Shushan, the capital, a man who was a Jew, whose name was Mordecai, the son of Yair, the son of Shimei, the son of Kish, of Bgmctv. Verse 6. He had been exiled from Jerusalem, captives exiled with Jeconiah, king of Yehuda, whom Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babel, had carried off.
So now we're getting where the Jewish people, now they're not in their own land. So that's another key we need to look at, because you need to know that Esther is a captive. This is not taking place in Israel. That the Persian Empire had destroyed Israel because Israel left their God, and God said, okay, I'm going to move you out over here. But, even in your captivity, God can use you for his kingdom. Anything you want to add about that? And he's from Benjamin.
Yes, he is a Benjaminite. This verse gives you details so that you have much better understanding of what Esther, well, at this point, Hadassah, what her situation is, what her station is, what her abilities are within the kingdom. So she's living with Mordecai, and he's a child of Benjamin, living exiled away from Jerusalem, all right, taken captive. But this also speaks to this amazing, just to know, this amazing plan. So even though there was a disaster, obviously a disaster in Israel that led to this exile, obviously things went terribly wrong, and Jehovah's people just must have offended him on such a high level that they are now living scattered among the nations. But we're reading an account of Jehovah already having set people in place, in this case Mordecai and Hadassah. So it is with us. Whatever our situation is, that's what we need to pay attention to. That
Like, one second. Whatever situation you're in, let God use you. Because there might be a blessing. There's one of the devotionals I wrote this week, where Yeshua said to Kepha, let's go out and fish. And Kepha says, we didn't catch anything all last night. and Yeshua said put out. So even in captivity, which you can end up in, let God use you. Be open to hearing the word of God. Let that still small voice in your body, in your spirit, listen for it. Next slide.
Verse 7. He had raised Hadassah, that is Esther, his uncle's daughter, because she had neither father nor mother. The girl was shapely and good-looking after her father's and mother's death. Mordecai had adopted her as his own daughter.
Now, this is Mordecai's cousin. Right? He might be a little bit older than her, but she didn't have father and mother. So what had happened to them? If you want to make it a little warmer in here, Cal, you can raise up the temperature. All right. So what we're looking at here is she's in. Now this is setting this. What the Lord is doing here is He's setting this up for later, because she's going to be offered 3 times the whole, half of the kingdom. And does she give it up? To save people she doesn't know. She doesn't have mother or father because they were dead. She's in captivity. She's being raised by her cousin. It's not even an uncle. He's a cousin. So here she's going to have to give up a lot because she's going to say, "If I perish, I perish." Want to add anything to this?
Well, we see a great example here of a situation where the Lord was looking out for her, and we find out through the rest of the book what an incredible stand-up guy Mordecai is. He's humble, very humble. He is obedient to the Lord. He operates, and this is important, he operates in obedience, except he's living in a foreign land. There's no priests operating in the temple. There's no Sanhedrin running around making sure you're behaving.
There's no offerings going up. No temple. The temple's been destroyed.
Yeah, there's nothing. But this man won't let go of righteousness and justice and all those good things. And he's a steward and he takes responsibility. I mean, all the things that a man in the scriptures would be. And this is the one looking after Esther. But on top of that, just realize his people have been, at this point when Esther lived, there were people drifting back to Israel already. I mean, this is the end of captivity.
Yeah, because you got to read Nehemiah and those other books there, because you'll get other information.
So Mordecai is hanging on to righteousness through the Torah, and he won't let it go, even though he easily could just use it as an excuse to just say, "Oh, whatever, I'm here now."
I'm done, Okay, let's move on to the next one. That's a good point, very good point. So this is interesting what we're doing this year. Okay? So we're having a discussion. It's sort of like a little Bible study, but we're going to read the whole Megillah. Next slide here, let me get to it.
Okay, verse 8. When the king's order and decree were proclaimed, and many girls assembled in Shushan the capital under the care of Haggai, Esther too was taken into the king's house and put under the care of Haggai, who was in charge of the women. Verse 9, the girl pleased him and won his favor, so that he lost no time in giving her cosmetics, her portions of special food, and 7 girls from the king's palace to attend her. He also promoted her and the girls attending her to the best place in the harem's quarters. Oh my gosh, there's so much you could say about this.
I'll let the woman speak for a minute. Go ahead.
Oh my goodness. So in this verse,
I know my wife of 30 years.
Yeah. Immediately she gets 7 girls, right? And immediately we think of in the Psalms we have the procession of the bride and her maids with her, and it's obvious in the Psalm that there's a bride who represents Zion, who is of the chosen people, and then there's all these other women with her, and they proceed. So this is a signal of the bride. Like, she's already been I don't want to say already been chosen, but, the Lord sets this up where, not everyone was getting their own maids,
Right.
And so here's this woman, this Jewish woman, who gets placed in the palace, and then she gets 7 girls. So this is all imagery that we should recognize straight through from the Gospels and from, all those scriptures about the bride, and how she would take time to prepare herself. And so the bride of Yeshua symbolized here, chosen from women among the nations. I mean,
Special
it's just
food.
so deep.
Special food.
Yeah, special foods, right? And-
7, the number of perfection.
Yeah, 7, the number of perfection. I mean, this is all foreshadowing of what we're going to see in the fulfillment of all the prophecies. But this is like a little...
But the other big key here is, once again, when she's asked to, because nobody knows that she's a Jew right now. So we're going to see that in a minute. But when she's asked to reveal herself, and she's going to get half the kingdom, know this, that she might have to give up all this and die to save people that she doesn't know. Next slide.
All right, verse 10. Esther did not disclose her people or family. So important. Because Mordecai had instructed her not to tell anyone.
This is one thing that, those that are not Jewish don't understand. So many different lands that we lived in when Israel got kicked out of Israel 2,000 years ago, where you didn't let anybody know that you were a Jew. That's why so many people changed their name. But the Dinnermans didn't change their name, but my mother's family changed their name. When my eldest sister, Gail, got married, her husband, they had changed their name. Even when my father passed and my mother got remarried, that family had changed their name. So, because they didn't want to be Jewish. They didn't want anybody to know they were Jewish. Anything you want to add there?
Yeah, I just want to point out Esther's obedience. There's a theme that runs through the entire book of Esther. And so we don't have Torah commandments. We don't have, the Lord coming down and speaking a commandment to a prophet. But there's this constant thread of obedience that is overwhelming by the time you get to the end of the book. So Mordecai had said, look, don't do this. I mean, she could have easily just made an excuse. Like, well, Mordecai's not here. I'm on my own in this place. But she remembered everything he taught her, and she treasured any advice that this person gave, and she obeyed. Very important. You'll see later that obedience is an important theme in this book.
Even in captivity. Next slide.
Yes. Okay, verse 16. She was brought to King Ahasuerus in his royal palace in the 10th month, Tevet, during the 7th year of his reign. The king liked Esther more than any of his wives. None of the other virgins obtained such favor and approval from him. So he put the royal crown on her head and made her queen in place of Vashti.
So here is something also very interesting. She's in captivity. Her parents are dead. She's paying attention to what her cousin said to her, who's raising her. She's being obedient. And because she's obedient, even in captivity, so this is something that might happen, to us again, to all different types of people. Because it's interesting last night that Israel attacked this land again. So here it's something very, very interesting that's going on here. All right, you want to add something to this?
And I just want to point out that the bride, we're told here because of her character, because of her demeanor, and obviously because she was beautiful, we can't ignore that, but she obtained such favor. And, we were told several verses ago that they didn't just take all of the virgins and have them. They selected among the most beautiful. So it's not like there was anybody else in the crowd that was of women that were not beautiful. She was among Persia's most beautiful young women in a group. So something else had to make her shine, because any of the other, if it was just about looks, she had plenty of competition. But there was much more to earn his favor.
But there's another part to look at here. Because,
She was beautiful. She was like this universally beautiful, inside and out person.
yeah. Right,
So the bride of Yeshua, needs to have that running in the background of your mind. You want to be part of the bride. What beauty do you display, and what kind of grace and beautiful behavior do you display honoring him? How do you get this favor?
Next slide.
Verse 20, again, Esther had not yet revealed her family ties or her people as Mordecai had ordered her, for Esther continued obeying what Mordecai told her to do, as she had when he was raising her.
All right, so she stays obedient even out of sight of her father, which is her cousin, okay? And she still doesn't reveal that she's a Jew. All right, that's a big part here, that she's going to be raised up, and she is obedient even when nobody's watching her. Her only family member is not watching her any longer. She still stays obedient. So when you don't think God is watching you, know that God watches you all the time. Want to add anything there?
No, I think that's the most important point, that she was, and there's this specific, as Mordecai had ordered her, she continued obeying Mordecai, even as if in the days when he was raising her. And it's so an important thing to occasions when Mordecai was sitting at the king's gate. Two of the king's officers, Bigtan and Teresh, from the group in charge of the private entryways, became angry and conspired to assassinate King Ahasuerus. Verse 22. But Mordecai learned about it and told Esther the queen. Esther reported it to the crediting Mordecai. Verse 23. The matter was investigated, found to be true, and both were hanged on the stake. All this was recorded in the daily journal that was kept.
So here, it's very important to understand that every moment of your life, the Lord could be doing something.
And it's being recorded.
Being recorded.
We have to remember that Mordecai's name was in the account because Esther reported everything to the king, including Mordecai's name. That daily journal is a representation of what's really going on. You mentioned earlier that the Lord is watching you every minute, every hour, every day. He sees it all. And the things you do, both good and bad, are recorded. And we are not aware of it in our daily lives. We lose track of that. And to be honest, so did Mordecai. Wasn't aware of any of this. But it comes up.
That we need to look at. We see here that Mordecai, a Jew, does not bow to anybody. This is a very important verse here. What verse is that? He didn't bow. Verse number.
He would not bow. is verse 2.
Verse 2. Verse 2, it says at the end there, but Mordecai would neither bow, he wouldn't bow down to him. As there's nobody, as followers of Messiah, that's the only one that we're bow down to, is Messiah himself. We don't bow to anybody else because the only one we bow to is our Elohim. You want to add anything to that?
Yeah, this is critically important. It's a very famous part of the story, and it becomes critical. But just realize that all of this was in Persia, just normal, everyday Persian behavior and a program where he was temporarily in Persia. I mean, he had been there for decades, and he knew exactly the trouble he was getting into, because this procedure and this high honor was very, very important in the culture of this basically pagan land. But he wasn't going to go along with it. And, we should be encouraged by his behavior and his fortitude and his perseverance to maintain his culture. That's what it is to be set apart.
Hey, next slide.
All right. Chapter 3, verse 5. Haman was furious when he saw that Mordecai was not kneeling and bowing down to him. Verse 6. However, on learning what people Mordecai belonged to, it seemed to him a waste to lay hands on Mordecai alone. Rather, he decided to destroy all of Mordecai's people, the Jews, throughout the whole of Ahasuerus' kingdom.
Hey, so one guy doesn't bow, so you want to kill everybody? That's just truly demonic. So you need to look up and find out where Haman's from. Had those people always had a problem with Israel? All right. Another part here. It seemed, in verse 6, it says it seemed to him a waste to just lay hands on Mordecai alone. Kill everybody. Kill mothers, babies, all these other people just because one guy went bound. Don't you think that's a little overkill? So Haman was furious because he would not be recognized as somebody to bow down to. Let's go next slide.
We are living in a time right now where anti-Semitism is all over the news, and there is hatred towards all of the Jewish people. And one could ask a similar question by Israel and all her people, and we know the reason for that.
Next slide.
Verse 7, in the first month, the month of Nisan, in the 12th year of Ahasuerus, they began throwing pur, that is, they cast lots, before Haman every day and every month until the 12th month, which is the month of Adar.
So what do we find in the 7th month? Oh, there's holy days in the 7th month, right? Holy days that the Israelites were not being able to celebrate because they're in captivity. So this is all happening in the 7th month when they should be celebrating Sukkot, Yom Kippur, the 3 holy days, in the fall. Okay?
Yeah, so this is Nisan, the first month, and there's a record of it there, so it's the new year, and they began throwing these pur. All right, verse 8. Then Haman said to Ahasuerus, there's a particular people scattered and dispersed among the peoples in all the provinces of your kingdom. Their laws are different from those of every other people. Moreover, they don't observe the king's laws. It doesn't befit the king to tolerate them. Verse 9, if it please the king, have a decree written for their destruction, and I will hand over 330 tons of silver to the officials in charge of the king's affairs to deposit in the royal treasury.
Hey everybody, I'm trying. If you're out there, we're being frozen up again. Hey, so we'll keep trying to broadcast, but I can't get to the computer at the moment. This is maddening. Connection a bit lost. Let me jump off here.
I'm not sure if everyone's having trouble or if you're wondering why we stopped. We're getting messages that people are getting frozen images. I'm not sure if it's on Rumble and YouTube or not, but
Hi.
Rabbi's investigating because
back
we
up
thought
again.
we solved the problem.
Hi. What do you have there? 3:8. Hi. So we were talking about the 7th month, and let's move on to where. Let's go on to.
We're on verse 8.
Go ahead. Verse 8.
So this is Haman's scheme, talking to the king, and what he's doing here is slander, it's innuendo, it's half truths, half lies, because we just saw in the previous scene where Mordecai was more than capable of participating in protecting the king from saboteurs and assassins that were coming for him. He was perfectly capable of sitting at the gate, which is a high place of honor. And Haman is telling the king, oh, they don't follow your laws. Well, it's not all of the laws. It's the one law of bowing down to Haman.
To Haman, yeah.
It's not all of the laws. It's one particular law.
All right, let's move on to the next part here. Next slide.
All right, verse 11. The king said to Haman, the money is given to you and the people too, to do with as seems good to you. The king's secretaries were summoned on the 13th day of the first month. They wrote down all Haman's orders to the king's army commanders and governors in all the provinces, and to the officials of every people, to each province in its own script, to each people in their own language. Everything was written in the name of the king Ahasuerus and sealed with the king's signet ring.
Okay, let's look at that. What day was it in verse 12? The 13th day of the first month. Right before Pesach. This all happens right before Pesach. Very interesting there. So evil was trying to kill the Jews. Now remember, the Jews are in captivity. They're not living in Israel. The temple's been destroyed. Okay? Verse 12, the king's secretaries were summoned on the 13th day of the first month. Hey, when we should be getting ready for Pesach, well, we're living in captivity, so I don't think they're going to be getting ready for Pesach. So then, and what do we have here in verse number? To each province in its own script, to each people in its own language. Everything was written down in the name of King Ahasuerus and sealed with the king's signet ring. Remind you a little bit of Revelation? Hey, let's move.
You know, I kind of had also, we had, 2 lessons about the book of Job. And, the king gave Satan license to go and do what you please, do as it seems good to you, to Mordecai and his people, right? And we just went over that whole piece, how, this is a process, and we're seeing it here in context of being in captivity, where you're very vulnerable. You can't defend yourself. You're not given weapons, and you're not given any warning.
No, that's very true. All right, so let's move on to the next slide. I'm going to try to get through as much of this as we can. Next slide. Verse 13.
13. Letters were sent by courier to all the royal provinces to destroy, kill, and exterminate all Jews from young to old, including small children and women, on a specific day, the 13th day of the 12th month, the month of Adar, and to seize their goods as plunder.
Hey, so here, once again, Satan's trying to wipe out, to destroy, kill, and exterminate all the Jews. Not just some, all. Because of one guy not bowing, don't you think that's a little overkill? But evil knows no bounds. That's why it says in Revelation and in the prophecy that all nations will turn against Israel. All right? So, it's not very simple. You can see if somebody is darker color than you, okay, or something that's going to, Jews have sometimes bigger noses than most people, but they're going to have to really seek, and they're to kill every Jew, they're going to have to first determine who is a Jew, right? You want to add anything before we move on to the next slide?
Yeah, well, in Germany, they made them wear a yellow star because they looked like everybody else.
That's correct. And it happened on the 13th day of the 12th month, which is coming up on Monday. Next slide. There.
All right, chapter 4. When Mordecai learned everything that had been done, he tore his clothes, put on sackcloth and ashes, and went out through the city, lamenting and crying bitterly.
Hey, so here Mordecai learns what's happened. Hey, one thing I always thought about, it's like, wasn't Mordecai working? And what was he doing all day? Hey, but he went out and made a lamentation. It's like, could this get any worse? It's like, what a week I'm having, So they're in captivity. Now he learns that all of us are going to be killed, and now he moves out. Let's move on to the next part there.
Verse 5. So Esther summoned Hatak, one of the king's officials attending her, and instructed him to go to Mordecai and find out what this was all about and why. Verse 6. Hatak went out to Mordecai in the open space in front of the king's gate. 7. And Mordecai told him everything that had happened to him and exactly how much silver Haman had promised to put in the royal treasury for the destruction of the Jews.
So this is a good point. I haven't made a big point about this. Somebody paying a lot of money to be able to kill all the Jews, right? So it's like it's a price was put on their head. And now remember, nobody knows that Esther, Hadassah, is a Jew, and she's in the palace.
Right now,
can you be a believer and work in the White House? Go ahead.
Exactly. And so here, we want to remember that the reason why Esther was sending one of the king's officials that was attending her, the reason he was sent out was because in Shushan, doing this kind of behavior in front of the king's gate was illegal. So
making a lamentation, wearing sackcloth in front of the king's, he didn't want that bad look.
Yeah, it was a bad look, If your people are lamenting and wearing sackcloth and ashes and doing this kind of thing, it reflects badly on the administration. So they didn't allow it. And Esther knew that, so she's trying to see if she can put a stop to that behavior, or, she's worried that he's going to get in trouble. And she's trying to do it without her hands on it, so she sends somebody else out there. She doesn't go running out there to find out what's going on. And so she gets the report back about what was really going on.
Hey, next slide.
Verse 11. All the king's officials, as well as the people in the royal provinces, know that if any man or woman approaches the king in the inner courtyard without being summoned, there's just one law. He must be put to death, unless the king holds out the golden scepter for him to remain alive. And I haven't been summoned to the king for the past 30 days.
All right, so here we have, Esther is not, she hasn't been with her husband for 30 days. And now this is why we talked about the other stuff earlier, earlier in this lesson, how much she has to lose. Nobody knows she's a Jew. She's in the palace. She's favored. She's now the queen. And now, want me to risk my life for all these other people that maybe you've never met, okay? Their mother and father are dead. They're in captivity. You want me to give all this up because you think, so what do you think about that?
Well, I do.
Because you're going to be put to death. It says you're going to be put to death.
Yeah, but I do want to give her the benefit of the doubt where she's thinking, even if I go, this isn't going to work. Me going to the king is going to be pointless because I'm not even going to get in there. I'm going to be dragged off and killed, so it's going to be pointless. I could see, some of her thinking that way, like this is not a plan. So I haven't been summoned, and it's also she's quoting the law. So she's very educated. She knows all the rules and regs in the palace. So it's not like she's guessing or having a panic attack where this isn't true. She knows exactly what the law says and she can quote it, which is very important. She knows exactly the laws that the king operates under inside the palace.
Yeah, what Reverend Kelly's talking about the secular law of her husband, not the law of God. Next slide. Mm-hmm. Here's the big one here.
Okay, here's the big scene. All right, Esther, chapter 4, verse 13. So they asked them to give Esther this answer. So she sent her aides out to talk to Mordecai again. And she's saying, look, I can't go, I'll die. And you can't stay out there in sackcloth and ashes. So what do we do now? So Mordecai sends the answer, and it's famous now. Even people who don't study the Bible know it. Don't suppose that merely because you happen to be in the royal palace, you will escape any more than the other Jews. Verse 14. For if you fail to speak up now, relief and deliverance will come to the Jews from a different direction. But you and your father's family will perish. Now, who knows whether you didn't come into your royal position precisely for such a time as this?
All right, so here, everybody's going to have to make a choice. And now, like I said, we looked at earlier, she gets raised up, she's in captivity, nobody knows she's a Jew, she's the queen now, so her father, who really is her cousin, is saying to her, maybe you were raised up for such a time as this. So you want me to give up everything to do this? It's a lot of choices that all of us are going to have to make in times that are coming. So you're a believer. Everybody's going to have to make the decision one time or another, where you're going to lose. You can lose everything. When things go really bad. And that might be starting. Because what happened last night with Israel and America attacking Iran, the world politically is not going to like that very much. Okay, so the Jews are going to be hated. So a lot of people, like my sister, hide that she's a Jew. Okay, my mother didn't let people know that she was Jewish. Right, so there's a lot of people that don't let people know that they're Jewish. And I know there's a lot of people that want to be Jews. Right, they want to do this stuff, but when it comes down to it, will you really, put the rubber meets the road, all those sayings. So here, Mordecai saying to her, don't think that you come to your royal position precisely for such a time as this. This is her father speaking to her. Okay, so what do you think, Robertson?
Well, what's really important about what you said is that making that choice, where he knows her really well. He's raising her. This isn't like some, girl that, his family was babysitting for her a couple of years ago or something. This is somebody he knows very well. And so we rely on the scripture that this might indeed be something she's thinking. That, I'm in the royal palace. What bad things could happen to me? And then he brings her back down to earth. Like, oh, you're high and mighty up there in the palace. let me tell you about what's going on down here on the ground instead of up in the clouds where you are. And he brings her down to reality, and we all need that. So when, it doesn't matter who it is, a brother in the Lord, a sister in the Lord, whether it's a mentor or a parent, no matter who you are and how long you've been walking with the Lord, you need somebody to bring you the hard truth and get your head out of the bubble. You need to be reminded of your actual situation. And so what he's doing here is rebuking her and saying, don't even think like that. And it's powerful and it's effective in the body. We all need to do that. Help somebody who's no longer grounded in the Torah, and they're taking side roads and bending the rules and not wanting to take responsibilities. And we all need that. And so this tough talk, we'll see in the next scene, it's powerful and it's very effective, and she gets right back on track.
All right, next slide.
16. Go assemble all the Jews to be found in Shushan, and have them fast for me, neither eating nor drinking for 3 days, night and day. Also, I and the girls attending me will fast the same way. Then I will go into the king, which is against the law, and if I perish, I perish.
All right, so she's willing to lay her life down, sort of like what Yeshua says, pick up your cross. You're willing to lay your life down so others may live. A seed doesn't do anything until the seed dies. Right? Once Yeshua died and rose from the grave, and Father rose him from the grave, he's willing to perish so that others may live. She's doing the same thing here. She's willing to perish so that others may live. And she's willing to put her life on the line because of that. Right? So it's fascinating that Israel went to war with this grouping of people last night. So I think it's something very important for all of us to look at. You want to add something or move on? Next slide.
Okay. I just want to make a quick comment. What's going on in the land of Persia right now, in this hour, where there's this battle going on? We want to point out that Ahasuerus was Persian, but Haman is not Persian. He is not Persian. And it's very important to remember that. In Iran right now, there are Persian people who are being run by Haman's relatives, not Persian. It's interesting, the dynamics are so amazing, because the mullahs running Iran are not Persian. It's just like Haman rising up to a seat of power in the land and doing war against which the mullahs were the ones who paid for and everything that happened on October 7th, Mm-hmm. So I just want to point that out, that there's so many parallels with what's happening right here, right now. All right. Chapter 5, verse 1. On the third day, Esther put on her royal robes and stood in the inner courtyard of the king's palace, opposite the king's hall. The king was sitting on his throne, on his royal throne, in the king's hall, across from the entrance to the hall. Verse 2, when the king saw Esther, the queen, standing in the courtyard, she won his favor. So the king extended the gold scepter in his hand toward Esther. Esther approached and touched the tip of the scepter.
Hey, so she lost a little bit of weight because she fasted for 3 days. All right. So she put on her royal robes, that the garments that are royal, and then she went in to see the king, and she was shown favor by the king. The bride of the king was shown favor by the king. Anything you want to add?
Okay, and this is a foreshadow or an archetype of a situation in which the bride of Yeshua, we have to take it to that because it's unmistakable. You can't avoid it, right? She puts on the royal robes. Well, fine linen is what we're going to be wearing. And you don't just get to barge in, but you get to go in where others don't. So nobody else gets to do what Esther just did in this scene. Nobody else does that. They wouldn't dare. They'd be afraid of dying. But she has this boldness. And she also knows the king. She knows that she's always had his favor. But now it's a test because now she's infringing a law. And so she's not sure exactly how this is going to go down. And then he extends the scepter. And you have to liken that to...
So she's shown grace.
She's shown grace. And the bride of Yeshua will be in that same position one day. We will be summoned in to be near him. And there will be a lot of people who are not. And I just want to, being separate, being holy, this is where it counts. All the hardships you put up with being separate and being different, you want to be different in this situation.
Definitely. Let's go to the next slide.
Verse 3, what is it you want, Queen Esther? The king asked her. Whatever your request, up to half the kingdom, it will be given to you. Verse 4, if it is all right with the king, answered Esther, let the king and Haman come today to the banquet I've prepared for him.
All right, so here we have the first time. We're going to start moving a little quicker because I want to try to finish up in about 20 minutes. All right, so this is the first time she's offered 50%. All right, so they've been sold to slavery. So now she's being offered 50% of the kingdom. What would you do? Would you side with the secular side, or were you being raised up for such a time as this? What do you think, Robertson?
Well, it's definitely a clear measure of how much he favored her, because we looked at the size in the very first slide, the map of what the kingdom involved, and he's giving her half of that.
That's a lot.
Let's make sure we remember that. What is he really saying here? But it's also, Ahasuerus is a foreshadow of Yeshua and his kingdom. He's got all these nations under him. He's sovereign in his capital. He's a foreshadow of Messiah's kingdom. And he's throwing this big banquet, which, of course, the banquet, the wedding banquet of the king. So it's all a foreshadow. So you have to place it in that context. And the king is offering half the kingdom to Esther. We get to share in the blessings when we align ourselves with our King of Kings, our Yeshua, when we know him that well, when we know all of his laws, and we know what pleases him and what displeases him, and we gain his favor. It's not for benefit. 9. That day, Haman went out happy and in good spirits, but when he saw Mordecai at the king's gate, that he neither rose nor moved for him, Haman was infuriated with Mordecai. So in this case, we're going back in the story and bringing the activities of Haman leading up to his big war on the Jews. And now he's getting that hatred stirred up again because he happened to pass by him. But remember, Mordecai's at the king's gate. This was a seat of honor. So even in a pagan land, the man had respect. People respected Mordecai. So this is a big deal. If Mordecai's not bowing down to Haman, other people are watching this, and they're very interested in, what's going on here? How come you don't bow down? Because this guy is a leader. Mordecai is a leader. This is another reason why Haman's so angry, because he knows, as long as I keep seeing Mordecai, the Jew, remaining seated at the king's gate, Verse 14. At this, Zeresh his wife and all his friends said to him, have a gallows 75 feet high constructed, and in the morning speak to the king about having Mordecai hanged on it. Then go in and enjoy yourself with the king at the banquet. Haman liked the idea, so he had a gallows made. Incredible.
It's incredible that it's something 75 feet big made in like a day. All right, so it's amazing how hatred can take over your life. Because here he's being invited to this great banquet. He's with the king. He's only him and the king. The king has 100 from India to Greece. It's a huge kingdom, and you're the number one guy on that. You're like a Rubio. Right? Yeah. So you're here, and you got one guy that's what hatred does to people. It rots your body, but.
Yeah, it's completely going to eat him alive, destroy him.
But that's the same thing that's going on there, as you pointed out earlier. The mullahs are not they're not Persian. Right? The mullahs are Haman's people. All right, let's move on here. Next slide.
All right, here we go. Chapter 6. 6 verse 1. That night the king couldn't sleep. So he ordered the records of the daily journal brought, and they were read to the king. Verse 2. It was found written that Mordecai had told about Bigtan and Teresh, two of the king's officers from the group in charge of the private entryways, who had conspired to assassinate King Ahasuerus.
So the king did not know that Mordecai saved his life. Okay? So here, why is the guy up in the middle of the night? Why does he ask for that particular thing to be read? Why is Haman coming to come see the king? First of all, the king would be sleeping. When you wake up, you wouldn't want to wake the king up. That would not be good. Right? So here, hatred is driving this man. He's been invited to a banquet with the king's wife, the king and queen, and he's the only other person there. You should be happy as a pig in mud. But hatred will rot your body.
And we also see the sovereignty of the Lord. Again, the Lord's name is not mentioned. But when you look at this series of events, it's completely impossible that it was random, because the timing had to be absolutely perfect. It was that particular night he couldn't sleep. And then out of the daily scrolls, imagine how much they recorded. They were always recording. The kings back then wanted every minute of their life recorded because they wanted it left for, an inheritance. They didn't want anything ever left out. And so it just so happens that scroll with Mordecai's name on it just so happened to be read at that particular time. I mean, there's no way this was random. I mean, you can just see Jehovah's precision, laser-like, over every detail. And, we should remember that in our lives when it seems like things are going wrong and all the details and everything that we refuse to look at how that's the Lord's precision in our lives. There must be a reason it's happening.
Hey, let's move to 6 and 7.
6 and 7. Okay. Chapter 6, verse 6. So Haman came in. The king said to him, what should be done for a man that the king wants to honor? Haman thought to himself, whom would the king want to honor more than me? Verse 7. So Haman answered the king, for a man the king wants to honor.
All right, move to the next one. Read the next slide.
All right. The robes and the horse should be handed over to one of the king's most respected officials, and they should put the robes on the man that the king wants to honor and lead him on horseback through the streets of the city, proclaiming ahead of him, this is what is done for a man whom the king wants to honor. Verse 10, the king said to Haman, hurry and take the robes and the horse, as you said, and do this for Mordecai, the Jew, who sits at the king's gate. Don't leave anything out that you mentioned.
All right, so go back one slide. All right, so here, Haman shows up in the nick of time. Everything's being set up by the Lord, okay? So Haman thinks I'm going to be honored. I'm already going to the banquet. I'm going to be honored here, okay? And who do you want to honor more than me? What are you, a Democrat? Okay. So,
But meanwhile, the whole reason Haman was going down there was to get Mordecai hanged.
right.
I mean, we have to remember the details are incredible.
Okay, so move to the next slide. Go to verse 9 and 10. So there, so Haman's thinking it's going to be him. So he's saying all these things because he wants to be an influencer. So here he's saying, who do you want to honor more than me? I'm so great. Okay, so, and then it turns out, then the king says, do it for this guy, the Jew. Okay. So so here Haman, thinking he was going to win this great honor, it's like Iran saying now, we're going to bomb Israel. You're firing off a couple rockets at a time. You just got blown out of the water. So here he's thinking he's going to get honored, and then it turns out the honor's going to go to somebody else because God had some other plan in mind. Quickly.
And give him praise and glory, everybody's praising him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, let's move to the next slide.
And Yeshua was being honored, but the Romans and the Sanhedrin and all those people hated him. So Yeshua was being
for no
honored,
reason at all.
Okay. Verse 13. After Haman had told Zeresh, his wife, and his friends everything that happened to him, his advisors and his wife Zeresh said to him, if Mordecai, before whom you have begun to fall, is a Jew, you will not get the better of him. On the contrary, your downfall before him is certain. Verse 6. While they were still talking with him, the king's officials came, hurrying to bring Haman to the banquet.
Okay, so now they're going to the banquet. Now it's only the three people. It's the king, the queen, and Haman. Okay, Haman should be in his joy, but now he's got his wife telling him, if he's a Jew, you're going to fall because there's a promise. Yeah. I'll bless those that bless Israel and curse those that curse. Next slide.
In the pagan world, the other Goyim, they knew of this. This was legendary, that you don't pick on the Jews and survive it. They knew. All right. Esther 7, verse 1. So the king and Haman went to the Queen Esther's banquet, and the king again said to Esther at the wine banquet, whatever your request, Queen Esther, you will be granted it. Whatever you want, up to half the kingdom, it will be done.
So this is another important thing. Her husband, the king, does not know she's a Jew. So here, the king has made this order. He knows what the order was. It was sealed with the king's ring, just like Revelation. Okay, so now she gets offered once again, before she tells the king about the Jewish people, once again, you will be offered to not do what you're supposed to do. Okay? And if you perish, you perish. Go ahead.
Verse 3, Esther the queen answered, if I have won your favor, king, and if it pleases the king, then what I ask to be given me is for my own life and the lives of my people. Verse 4, for we have been sold, I and my people, to be destroyed, killed, exterminated. If we had only been sold as men and women slaves, I would have remained quiet, since then our trouble would not have been worth the damage it would have caused the king to alter the situation.
All right, so silent. You want to add anything to this?
Well, I think the other piece of this is sort of the foreshadow, where we have confirmation here that the bride of Yeshua is Jewish. And what do I mean by that? Well, when you're engrafted in, when you're saved by the blood of the Lamb, you are drawn in and become part of this giant chosen work of the Lord. You are brought into the olive tree. And there's no getting around that. You will bear fruit only if you're engrafted into that Jewish tree. And right there we have it. The bride saying, you know what? Yeah, I am part of this, the Lord's chosen people. I am not like everyone else. I am set apart, different. And it's so critically important.
That is a very good point. You're set apart. But what do you do with being set apart? That's the other key. Do you do what do you do, or does Satan offer you? Remember, he offers Yeshua. This will all be yours if you just bow down to me. Mm-hmm. Okay, so here Esther's being offered everything, 50% of the kingdom. That's a big kingdom. Next slide. Her and her people, the Jewish people. Now, the Jews are like, okay, we're already paying for this, and so the Lord is giving them. They're going to be wiped out. So now she lets out to this ruthless enemy. To this very day, these people still hate the Jews for no reason at all. Next slide.
Verse 7, in a rage, the king got up from the wine banquet and went out to the palace garden. But Haman remained pleading with Esther, the queen, to spare his life, for he could see that the king had decided to do him in. Verse 8, Haman had just fallen on the couch where Esther was when the king returned from the palace garden to the wine banquet. He shouted, "Is he even going to rape the queen here in the palace? Before my very eyes?" The moment these words left the king's mouth, they covered Haman's face.
All right, so here, why did the king come in just at that moment as Haman was falling on his queen? So everything's timing, and the Lord is perfect with that timing. So we just have to look at that. So you have to walk in it. Okay? And in verse 8, Haman had just fallen on the couch where Esther was when the king returned from the palace garden and to the wine banquet. So here, Esther made this banquet for them, and here, the truth is being told, and here the Lord is going to do a great thing, and Haman's going to die, and Mordecai's going to live. Next slide.
Verse 9, Harvanah, one of the king's attendants, said, "Look, the gallows, 75 feet high, that Haman made for Mordecai, who spoke only good for the king, is standing at Haman's house." The king said, "Hang him on it." Verse 10, so they hanged Haman on the gallows he had prepared for Mordecai. Then the king's anger subsided.
All right, so now, all right. So this is something very interesting that what evil meant to do evil to us, God changed that to good. Okay? So in the end of days, evil will be called good and good will be called evil. So it's very important that this book proves that God is always in control. Sometimes he feels far away, but you need to know that God is always in control. Always in control. He knows everything that's going on, and just because you don't know what's going on, he has everything in control. Your job is to follow him in spirit and in truth. Okay? So Haman gets hanged, Mordecai lives. Next slide.
Okay, chapter 8, verse 1. That same day, King Ahasuerus gave the house of Haman, the enemy of the Jews, to Esther, the queen. Also Mordecai appeared before the king, for Esther had revealed his relationship to her. Verse 2, the king removed his signet ring, which he had taken back from Haman, and gave it to Mordecai. Then Esther put Mordecai in charge of Haman's house. Oh, wow.
Hey, go ahead. You want to talk about it? Go ahead.
So,
you got the house of the enemy?
Look at how the world gets flipped over. And so you have to hang in there. You have to walk that straight path and don't let anything dissuade you. And don't start turning back or taking back things. Stand in the truth of the word. Stand in the truth of Messiah. Stand in that place of being holy, which means separated. No, you are not like everybody else. And embrace it. Walk in it. Live in it. Don't shy away from it. Because if you shrink back, no one wants to follow somebody who looks shriveled and cowardly and afraid. You want to draw people to Messiah. Walk in it boldly. Don't do that to yourself, and then in the end you get nothing, because Yeshua says, now you're acting lukewarm, and I'll vomit you out. So Mordecai gets Haman's house. It's a perfect match. It's not, well, he got the house next door. No, he got Haman's house. And he got the signet ring. So he could proclaim things in the king's name.
Okay,
it's fantastic.
Let's move to verse 8 and 9.
Okay. Okay. So, you should issue a decree in the king's name for whatever you want concerning the Jews, and seal it with the king's signet ring, because a decree written in the king's name and sealed with the king's ring can't be rescinded by anyone. Verse 9. The king's secretaries were summoned at that time, and on the 23rd day of the third month, the month of Sivan, and a decree was written according to everything Mordecai ordered concerning the Jews, to the army commanders, governors, and officials of the provinces from India to Ethiopia, 127 provinces, to each province in its script, and to each people in their language, also the Jews in their script and language.
Now, what happens in the third month? Oh, Shavuot. Okay, so here, letters are being sent out to the whole kingdom, probably near the time of Shavuot. Okay, in the third month.
So this decree goes out. Now, we have to remember, there's no cell phones, there's no emails, there's not even snail mail that comes every day. All right, so this is a big. The map we looked at, the size of this enormous territory, and they're trying to get the word out from the proclamation that Mordecai was going to make and seal it. That had to go out, and so this takes some time. It's not going out, and it's not going to get there, the day after tomorrow. It's going to take a while till everybody gets the news. So we have to kind of factor that in. All right. Verse 11. The letters said that the king had granted the Jews in every city the right to assemble and defend lives by destroying, killing, and exterminating any forces of any people or province that would attack them, their little ones or their women, or would try to seize their goods and plunder. Verse 12, on the designated day in any of the provinces of the king Ahasuerus, namely the 13th day of the 12th month, the month of Adar.
All right, so here what we're seeing here is the king is giving the Hebrew people the right to defend themselves. Writing a law so that they can defend themselves? Okay. Because they were going to be to assemble and defend their lives by destroying, killing, and exterminating any forces of any people or province that would attack them. Okay, because people hate the Jews for no reason at all. Okay, on the 13th day of the 12th month is on the month of Adar. Okay, let's move on there.
Okay, verse 15. Meanwhile, Mordecai left the king's presence arrayed in royal blue and white, wearing a large gold crown and a robe of fine linen and purple. And the city of Shushan shouted for joy. Verse 16, for the Jews, all was light, gladness, joy, and honor. Wow, what a list.
Yeah, so those are some beautiful words. Hey, this is why, Purim is not supposed to be the Jewish Halloween. It's supposed to be
or Mardi Gras.
Or Mardi Gras. It's supposed to be something beautiful. You're supposed to see how God protects his people when they're obedient, even when nobody is looking. Hey, you have anything you want to add to this blue and white there? Oh, the Israeli flag.
Yeah, the colors are really, really important, especially when the Lord takes time to list them all like that very carefully. All right, chapter 9, verse 1. The time approached for the king's order and decree to be carried out, the day when the enemies of the Jews hoped to overpower them. But, as it turned out, the opposite took place. The Jews overpowered those who hated them. Thus, on the 13th day of the 12th month, the month of Adar. 9 verse 5. The Jews put all their enemies to the sword. There were great slaughter and destruction, as they did whatever they wanted to those who hated them. Verse 6. In Shushan, the capital, the Jews slaughtered 500 men.
It would be interesting to see if any bombs fell on Tehran today, to see, and if they say 500 people died. That'd be very interesting,
The
don't you
numbers
think?
might be interesting.
Yeah, it'd be very interesting.
Verse 13. Esther replied. Now, we're talking about the word is coming in, right, of how the battle is going. And Esther and the king are sitting there waiting with, anxiety a little bit about, well, how are things going? And so they're very anxious every time the reports are coming in of the Jews are winning or whatever's happening. So Esther replied, if it pleases the king, let the Jews in Shushan act again tomorrow in accordance with today's decree. And also have Haman's 10 sons hanged on the gallows. Esther 9:14, the king ordered these things done. A decree was issued in Shushan, and they hanged Haman's 10 sons.
Now that's very interesting because Job had how many kids? 10. 10 is the number of a million. Right? So Haman, his line gets wiped out. He had 10 sons, and they're all wiped out because they wanted to, because the promise is, I will bless those that bless Israel and curse those that curse Israel. Let's move on to the next slide.
So the Jews in Shushan assembled also on the 14th day of the month of Adar and killed 300 men in Shushan. But they did not touch the spoil. Verse 16, the other Jews, those in the royal provinces, had assembled, defended their lives, and won rest from their enemies, killing 75,000 of those who hated them, but without touching the spoil. 17, on the 13th day of the month of Adar. So, on the 14th day of Adar, they rested and made it a holiday for celebrating and rejoicing. You want me to keep going?
Yes, please.
All right, verse 20. Mordecai recorded these events and sent letters to all of the Jews in all the provinces of King Ahasuerus, both near and far, instructing them to observe the 14th day, the month of Adar, and the 15th day every year. Verse 22, to commemorate the days on which the Jews obtained rest from their enemies, and the month which for them was turned from sorrow into gladness, from mourning into a holiday. They were to make them days of celebrating and rejoicing, sending portions of food to each other, and giving gifts to the poor.
Hey, so here you have the Christmas, okay?
Actual Jewish Christmas.
The actual Jewish Christmas is on Purim, where you send gifts.
Gifts.
Okay, this is where you send gifts, not on Hanukkah. Hanukkah is about dedication. Okay, so this is the 14th day of the month of Adar and the 15th day. Sounds like Passover and Hag Matzah. Okay, 14th and 15th. Okay, so we're to remember these days, okay? So let's go one more slide here, and let's wrap this up.
Okay, chapter 9, verse 27. The Jews resolved and took upon themselves, their descendants, and all who might join them, that without fail they would observe these 2 days in accordance with what was written in this letter, and at the appointed times every year, and that these days would be remembered and observed throughout every generation, every family, every province, and every city, and that these days of Purim would never cease among the Jews, or their memory be lost by their descendants. Wow.
Yeah. There are some people that say we shouldn't celebrate Purim. Well, here, this book is in the Bible. It does not mention God's name, but God's name is everywhere. He's on every page and every word. So we do celebrate this, and it is good to get the children to understand this very important book, okay? But it's more prophetic than anything else. And I think it's fascinating that we're doing it today, and that Israel went to war last night with Iran. Any last comments?
One last comment. They earned rest from their enemies. And if that isn't one of the best lines to draw us to the reality of what we're living in, because Yeshua said you will find rest for your souls. And there's going to be a day where everything is all Shabbat. That day is coming.
Amen.
It will happen, that it will be all Shabbat. And we'll all earn a rest from the enemy. And so everything leading up to that point, you have to have your eyes open to see that everything that happened through the account of Esther, it was a hunger that was recorded, this hunger to have rest from their enemies. And it's repeated over and over throughout the different verses. And that's what we're doing. That's what we seek from Yeshua. He said, I will give you rest. And it's not a sword battle where you earn a rest. It starts in the heart. And it starts with that getting favor and finding favor from Yeshua and knowing him, knowing what he likes, what he loves, being his best friend, being somebody who wants to be with him, seeking after him. It's amazing stuff.
It truly is amazing stuff.
One last thing. This is a particularly fantastic book for, especially if you have children, because I often, in the children's ministry, many, many, many times, were asked by children, how come I can't see God? How do you know he's there? I can't see him, And when you have a young child challenging you with questions like that, you need to give examples like this. Like, well, when we read through that whole book, right, you saw Mordecai and Esther following Torah, following the teachings of the Lord, even though it doesn't say the Lord appeared in the battle, It's an excellent, excellent way to show people living out their lives, but walking in the truth, not just talking about it.
Amen to that. We are living in some extraordinary times. I'm blessed to be able to bring this to you. Representative Kelly and I have had some ramblings around the sanctuary today. All right? So let's pray. If you're out there, let's pray. Thank you, Lord, for your blessings today. Thank you, Lord, for your hand in our lives. If you're out there today, you're not sure if God is there. Well, he is, and he's knocking on your heart. Put him to the test. Let him come into your life. Seek his face, and he'll show you that he is truly real. But if you don't know where you're going to live 1,000 years from now, let me tell you, you are going to be living 1,000 years from now, and there's only one of two places, heaven or hell. The only way into heaven is through Messiah Yeshua. Yeshua said, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. Nobody gets to the Father except through me. I'm the door. I'm the shepherd. You have to go through him. So I'm going to offer up a short, simple prayer. If you're out there, if you've never said this prayer and inviting Yeshua into your life, pray this prayer so that you will know where you're going to be living 1,000 years from now. Say, Yeshua, I'm a sinner. Today I saw your hand and what went on in Persia there. I want your protection. I want your plan for my life. So I invite you into my life, Yeshua. I invite you into my heart and into my soul. I am a sinner, so I ask you to wash me, clean me, make me something new. If you've done that for the very first time and asked to be made clean, to to wash, be made clean. You are born again. But Yeshua said this, if you don't profess him before man, he cannot and will not profess you before his Father and his angels. So if you've accepted Messiah for the very first time, you're in our sanctuary, just slip up your hand so we can pray with you. If you're hearing this on radio or television or internet, just let us know so we can pray with you. In Yeshua's name, and everybody says, Amen.
Shalom, this is Messianic Rabbi Andrew Dinnerman. I would personally like to thank you for tuning in to the Remnant's Call each and every week. You can listen to the full message on our website, bethgoyim.org. If you have drawn closer to the King of Kings, learned more about him today, we are blessed. If you are blessed by these messages, please consider a donation to our ministry. You can go to our website, bethgoyim.org. That's BETHGOYIM.org, and click on the donate button. You do not have to have a PayPal account to donate. All you need is a debit card. Once again, thank you very much for listening to The Remnant's Call.
If you have not taken your first steps to be born again, just ask God's help. Remember, it's His loving grace that has come to find you. No one is worthy or able to reach God, but God can reach us, and He's reaching out to you now. Just open your heart and let Him in. His arms are open, and the blessing of salvation and eternal life are waiting for you. Don't let it wait any longer.